Welcome back to another episode of our exploration of the Divine Guide by Amir-Moezzi. Today we are continuing our journey through the fascinating concept of aql in early Imamite thought. Before we dive into today's content, let's briefly recap what we covered in our previous episode. We traced the evolution of the concept of aql from its pre-Islamic origins to its transformation in early Shiaism. We discovered how aql evolved from simply meaning good sense in pre-Islamic Arabia to becoming a sacred faculty of religious understanding in the Quran. Most importantly, we learned how the early Imams elevated aql to a central position in their doctrine, making it the essential faculty for comprehending their teachings. Without aql, the Imam's words remain ineffective or incomprehensible. Today we will explore the four fundamental dimensions of aql as conceptualized in early Imamite thought. The four dimensions are the cosmogonic, the ethical-epistemological, third spiritual, and the fourth soteriological dimensions. And if you didn't understand any of these terms, don't worry, as we will explain them in detail. These four dimensions, or the four aspects that we're going to talk about, reveal the profound depth and the multifaceted nature of aql in Shiite Islam. Let's begin with the cosmogonic dimension, how aql relates to the very creation of the universe. This perspective is beautifully illustrated in a famous tradition attributed to the sixth Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, known as the Hadith of Junud al-Aql. Junud means armies, so it means the tradition of the armies of aql. According to this tradition, aql was the first of God's creations, proceeding directly from God's light. This hadith tells us that God drew it forth from the right side of his throne, his arsh, and then tested it with two commands: to retreat and to advance. In both cases, aql obediently followed God's directives. Pleased with this perfect submission, God proclaimed, "I created you glorious, and I give you preeminence over all my creatures." This cosmic drama continues with the creation of Jahl, ignorance, as aql's cosmic counterpart. And here's the crucial difference. When God commanded Jahl to retreat, it retreated. But unlike aql, when Jahl was commanded to advance towards God, it refused. Its pride and hesitation in approaching God led to its condemnation, and so, for this disobedience, God damned it and banished it from his presence. Now, what follows this episode, this event, this cosmic event, is truly fascinating. Both aql and Jahl were endowed with 75 armies. For aql, these armies represent its moral and spiritual qualities, and for Jahl, it represents its defects and immoralities. And these opposing forces were thus elevated to cosmic powers and counterpowers locked in an eternal combat since the very beginning of the universe. And what's particularly significant about this cosmogonic dimension is how the Imamite doctrine establishes parallels between these cosmic forces and the earthly realities. the realities of the worldly life. Throughout Amir-Moezzi's study, we see consistent identification between Aql and its armies with the Imam and his faithful followers on one side, and on the other side, ignorance, Jahl, and its armies with the enemies of the Imam on the other side. This cosmogonic framing represents a profound development beyond Quranic definitions, transforming Aql into a kind of cosmic morality, a metaphysical prototype engaged in perpetual warfare with cosmic immorality. Now that we've discussed the cosmic dimension of Aql, let's move to the next dimension, which is at the human level, and explore the ethical epistemological dimension of Aql. According to Imamite doctrine, Aql is not something that can be acquired through study or effort. It's fundamentally a divine gift. The eighth Imam Ali al-Salam makes this distinction when he says, Aql is a favor from God, whereas good education is a quality acquired with difficulty. He who works to achieve a good education can succeed, while he who works to attain Aql only increases his ignorance. This presents a stark contrast between Aql and what was known as adab, the term used for good education or secular knowledge that can be acquired through human effort. Aql, by contrast, is an innate faculty of transcendent knowledge granted by God in varying degrees to different individuals. This innate quality is beautifully illustrated in a dialogue between the sixth Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam and one of his disciples. The disciple observed that different people comprehend the Imam's teachings at different rates. Some understand them immediately, others need complete explanations, and still others require repeated instruction. The Imam explained that these differences reflect when each person received their aql. Some had their aql kneaded into their very being at the time of conception. Others received it while nursing at their mother's breast, and still others only acquired it later in adulthood. This shows us that aql isn't just about intelligence or reasoning ability, fundamental spiritual receptivity that varies from person to person based on divine dispensation. What humans can do, however, is develop and actualize this divine gift that exists within in a potential state. So while you can't acquire aql through effort, you can develop and actualize it. And this actualization happens through ilm, the initiatory knowledge taught by the Imams. As Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam explains, the possessor of aql realizes fundamental truths about God through this faculty. Through aql, he realizes that God is truth, that there are things that God loves and hates, and that obedience and disobedience exist. But, and this is crucial, aql alone is insufficient to grasp the depths of these truths. Only sacred knowledge, ilm, and its development can help complete this understanding. And without this ilm, aql is of no assistance. Think about it this way. If aql is the engine, then ilm is the fuel that drives it. And the more that the engine runs and drives, the better it becomes at efficiently consuming the fuel. So it's actually a beautiful symbiosis, positive cycle. Aql is needed to recognize and receive the Imam's true knowledge, And that knowledge is needed to actualize and further develop one's akal. They're mutually dependent faculties that together create a pathway to a complete understanding of religion. The third aspect we will explore is the spiritual dimension of akal, which is eloquently outlined in a discourse by the seventh Imam, Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam, addressed to one of his prominent companions, Hisham ibn al-Hakam. In this discourse, the Imam explores almost all Quranic references to akal and presents it as a faculty for apprehending the divine, a power of metaphysical perception. He identifies it with basar, the Arabic term basar, or interior vision, and describes it as a light, as a nur, located in the heart, through which one discerns and recognizes signs from God. One of the most profound doctrinal points emerges here. While the prophets and Imams constitute what's called the Hujjatun Zahira, meaning the exterior proof of God's existence, Aql serves as the Hujjatun Batina, meaning the interior proof. Let me digress here for a moment and explain the deeper meaning of this term Hujjat or Hujja, because it's frequently used in Islamic literature. What does it really mean? Well, in its basic linguistic meaning, Hujja means proof or evidence. However, in Islamic theological context, it carries a deeper meaning. It refers to a conclusive, irrefutable proof or argument that establishes the truth and creates an obligation upon the one who receives it. Think of Hujja like a legal notice. Once you receive a legal notice, for example, you can't claim ignorance of it, and you become responsible for responding to it. Similarly, Hujja is like a legal notice from Allah, and when something becomes a Hujja, it creates a religious obligation that you can't ignore. So coming back to the topic of the spiritual dimension of Aql, we said earlier that the Imams constitute the Hujjatun Zahira, the undeniable manifest proof, and Aql serves as the Hujjatun Batina, the undeniable inner proof. And this creates a beautiful symmetry between external and internal guidance. And Imam Musa al-Kazim in his discourse establishes constant parallels and interconnections between the Aql and Imam, and even interchanges these two terms, describing the Imam as the exterior Aql and Aql as the interior Imam. Wow, here the Imam is like the Aql and Aql is like the Imam. So establishing a type of correspondence, equivalence between them. So Aql, also the internal Imam, functions as a kind of subtle organ of religion, the faculty without which a person is disconnected from the divine realm. Without Aql, a person is effectively without religion, without that which ties them back to God. If you remember from the previous episode where we discussed the etymology of the word Aql and how it referred to as the rope tied to an animal's feet. Aql is what ties us to God and God alone, allowing us to experience the true Tawheed, the oneness and the onlyness of God. This explains why the first Imam Islam reportedly stated, self-infatuation is proof of the weakness of Aql. A self-infatuated person, because of the weakness of his Aql, has severed or weakened his connection with God and has forgotten his status as a servant of God, and as a result has fallen into the trap of impious self-absorption. Another tradition attributed to Imam Ali recounts that when the angel Jibrail appeared to Prophet Adam alayhi salam, he offered him a choice between three gifts and he had to choose one of them. So the three choices offered to him were aql, haya, which is modesty, and deen, religion. Prophet Adam chose aql. And at that point, Jibrail instructed the other two to depart. However, the other two responded that they had received divine orders to remain always in the company of aql, wherever it might be found. So this illustrates the inseparable connection between intellect, modesty, and faith, aql, haya, and iman. And Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq summarizes all of this in a very profound statement. He says, "He who has aql has religion, and he who has religion wins paradise." Finally, let's explore the soteriological dimension of aql, its role in salvation and ultimate judgment. That's what soteriology means. Here we see that aql isn't just about knowledge or even spiritual experience, it's about authentic religiousness versus mere facade or appearance. In the absence of aql, the Imamite tradition suggests there can only be false religiousness or even hypocrisy. And true aql isn't about external religious performances only, but it's about genuine spiritual understanding. When someone mentioned to Imam Ja'far, Sadiq alayhi salam, the apparent aql of a man obsessively focused on prayers and ablution, the Imam responded that such a person couldn't possess true aql, as he was actually obeying Satan, not God. When asked directly, what is aql, Imam Ja'far defined it as that by which the All-Merciful is worshipped and through which paradise is won. The Imam drew a distinction between genuine aql and its counterfeit, which he identified in figures like Muawiyah, the first Umayyad Khalif and the enemy of Imam Ali alayhi salam. What Muawiyah possessed, according to Imam Ja'far alayhi salam, was trickery, satanic attitude, resembling aql but was not aql. And this distinction becomes crucially important because, according to Imamite doctrine, the quality of each person's religion depends on the quality of their aql. Moreover, aql becomes the criterion by which humans will be judged on the day of judgment. According to traditions reported by the 5th and the 8th Imams, Muhammad al-Baqir and Ali al-Rada, alayhum as-salam, God declares to aql, "By my glory and my majesty, I have not created any creature dearer than you, and I offer you in your entirety only to him whom I love. It is taking only you into consideration that I command and that I forbid, that I punish and that I reward." Imam Baqir alayhi salam states this even more directly, that on the day of resurrection, God will judge people according to the degree of aql he has given them in this world. And this makes aql not only a gift but also a profound responsibility. And here's where this connects to the broader Imamite worldview. The coming resurrection is intimately tied to the return of the hidden Imam and his final mission to conquer the forces of ignorance, the forces of Jahl. One phase of this mission involves completing and unifying the aql of the faithful, the believers, the Shia, who have remained steadfast through the period of spiritual darkness that we're going through right now. As another tradition puts it, at the time of the return, God will place the hand of our Qaim. And Qaim here is the reference to the 12th Imam. So God will place the hand of our Qaim on the head of the faithful, and through this hand, they will have their Aql unified and their Hilm completed. If you remember the definition of Hilm from the previous episode. So now I'm going to bring this episode to a conclusion. And let's recap quickly. So we've explored today Aql in early Imamite thought is far more than just reason or intellect, as understood in modern terms. It represents a multifaceted concept that spans cosmic origins, human ethics, spiritual discernment, and ultimate salvation. So let's review quickly the 4 dimensions of Aql again. Cosmogonically, as the first creation of God, locked in eternal battle with ignorance at the very foundation of reality, at the very beginning of the universe. Number 2, ethically and epistemologically. Aql is a divine gift that enables recognition of the Imam's true knowledge while being actualized through that very knowledge. Number 3, the spiritual dimension. Aql is an interior proof of God that parallels the exterior proof of the Imams, functioning as a subtle organ of authentic religion. And number 4, soteriologically, as the criterion of genuine religiousness and the standard of divine judgment. From its status as the first creation of God to its role as the interior guide, corresponding to the exterior guidance of the Imams, Aql emerges as perhaps the most crucial faculty for the faithful. It is simultaneously a divine gift that cannot be acquired through human effort, yet must be developed through the knowledge and the ilm provided by the Imams. It functions as both the faculty that recognizes true guidance and the criterion by which humans will ultimately be judged. These 4 dimensions, cosmogonic, ethical, epistemological, spiritual, and soteriological, create a comprehensive framework that places Aql at the very center of the relationship between humanity and divinity in early Imamite thought. And this isn't the rationalized theology that later scholars have made Imamism into, but this is something much more mystical, much more immediate, much more concerned with spiritual transformation rather than philosophical or rational argumentation. So in our next episode, we will, inshallah, explore how this understanding of Aql relates to the broader Imamite understanding of religious authority and the nature of the Imam himself. How does this interior proof connect to the exterior proof? What does it mean for the relationship between the believer and the Imam? These questions will take us deeper into the heart of early Imamite doctrine and its distinctive worldview. So until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, true understanding comes not from our efforts alone, but from the divine gift that enables us to recognize truth when we encounter it. Finally, always remember the words of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he who has aql has religion, and he who has religion wins paradise. Ma'as salam.